Night air hung heavy in the quiet parking lot, streetlights flickering weakly. Daniel Carter, 39, a single dad heading home after a late shift, heard a scream. He sprinted toward the sound, two men cornering a young woman against her car. Without hesitation, he fought them off, pulling her to safety. Shaken, she whispered her name, Emily Ross. Hours later, Daniel learned the truth. She was the CEO's sister. Stay. This touching story will shock you with what happened next. Daniel Carter had perfected the exhausting routine of working two jobs to provide for his 11-year-old daughter, Lily. Days were spent at Patterson's garage, where his skilled hands repaired engines and transmissions for customers who appreciated honest work at fair prices. Nights belonged to his janitorial position at the downtown office complex, where he cleaned corporate suites and conference rooms after executives went home to families they could afford to spend time with. It was nearly midnight when Daniel finished mopping the floors of Ross Industries' executive level, his second job of the day finally complete. The parking garage was deserted except for a few remaining cars belonging to security guards and overnight cleaning staff who shared his schedule of making ends meet through multiple employment. The scream that cut through the night air sent ice through his veins, a sound of genuine terror that no decent person could ignore. Daniel dropped his cleaning supplies and ran toward the source, his work boots echoing off concrete walls as he sprinted between parked cars. Two men had cornered a young woman against her BMW, their intentions clear from her defensive posture and their aggressive advance. She clutched her purse like a shield, backing against her car with nowhere left to retreat. Daniel didn't hesitate, didn't calculate odds, didn't consider personal safety. He charged the attackers with the protective fury of someone who understood what it meant to be responsible for another person's well-being. Years of physical labor had kept him strong, and desperation to help someone in danger gave him courage that surprised even himself. The confrontation was brief but decisive. One attacker fled immediately when faced with unexpected resistance. The second tried to fight but quickly discovered that a man protecting innocence possessed strength beyond his normal capabilities. Within minutes, both men were running toward the parking garage exit, their cowardly assault thwarted by someone who refused to look away from someone else's crisis. "Are you hurt?" Daniel asked gently, extending his hand to the shaken woman while maintaining respectful distance. His voice carried the same protective tone he used with Lily when she woke from nightmares about losing another parent. The woman looked up with tears streaming down her face, her expensive clothes disheveled, but her dignity intact thanks to his intervention. "I'm okay," she whispered, accepting his steadying hand. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't—" "My name's Daniel," he said simply, offering comfort without expectation of gratitude or recognition. "Let me drive you home. You shouldn't be alone right now." During the quiet drive to her upscale apartment, she introduced herself as Emily Ross, speaking softly about her evening class that had run late, about walking alone to her car despite knowing better, about the fear that had paralyzed her until his arrival changed everything. Daniel listened with the patient attention he gave Lily when she needed to process difficult emotions, offering reassurance without judgment, presence without pressure. He called home from Emily's phone to let Lily know he would be late, his voice carrying the gentle authority of a parent who always kept his word. "I just did what anyone should do," Daniel said when Emily tried to thank him repeatedly, uncomfortable with praise for behavior he considered basic human decency. No one should have to face something like that alone. The next morning at Ross Industries, Daniel arrived for his day shift maintenance work, expecting another routine day of repairs and equipment checks. Instead, he found his boss, Richard Ross, storming through the facility with unusual agitation, his expensive suit and grim expression suggesting serious problems that would affect everyone's workday. Behind Richard walked a familiar figure, Emily, whose eyes widened with recognition as she spotted Daniel among the maintenance staff. Richard's explosion of disbelief echoed through the maintenance bay as he processed the impossible coincidence that his sister's rescuer worked in his own building. "You're telling me that my janitor, saved my sister from an attack last night?" The shocked silence that followed rippled through nearby employees who had never seen their demanding boss display such raw emotion. Daniel nodded quietly, uncomfortable with the attention and unsure how to respond to Richard's mixture of gratitude and incredulous surprise. Emily stepped forward with quiet determination. Daniel saved my life, Richard. If he hadn't been there. Her voice trailed off, but her meaning was clear to everyone present. Over the following days, Emily began visiting Daniel during his lunch breaks, initially bringing expensive takeout as thanks, but gradually transitioning to simple gestures of friendship that meant more than costly gifts. She would arrive with sandwiches and coffee, settling onto an upturned crate in the garage to share meals with someone who had risked his safety for her well-being. Lily warmed to Emily with the effortless acceptance that children show toward adults who demonstrate genuine kindness. Within a week, she was calling their new friend Aunt Em and insisting that Emily stay for dinner whenever she visited their modest apartment. During these quiet evening conversations around Daniel's small kitchen table, Emily revealed struggles that wealth couldn't solve. Richard means well, but he's so busy protecting me that he never actually sees me. I'm his sister, his responsibility, his problem to solve, but never just Emily. Daniel understood the loneliness in her words, sharing his own story of raising Lily alone since his wife Sarah died from cancer 3 years earlier. Some nights I lie awake wondering if I'm enough for her, if I can give her everything she needs when it's just me trying to be both parents. Their friendship deepened through shared vulnerabilities and mutual support. Emily helped Lily with art projects that required supplies Daniel couldn't afford, while Daniel taught Emily basic car maintenance that gave her independence her wealth had never provided. "You don't treat me like I'm made of glass," Emily observed one evening while learning to check her oil levels. "Richard hires people to do everything for me, but you teach me to do things myself." Sparks began flickering between them during these ordinary moments, when their hands touched while sharing tools, when Emily's laughter filled Daniel's quiet apartment, when Lily fell asleep against Emily's shoulder during movie nights that felt like the family experiences both adults had been missing. But Daniel fought against these growing feelings, knowing that crossing class boundaries could cost him everything he'd worked to build for Lily's future. His daughter needed stability more than he needed romance, and challenging social expectations could destroy the security they had achieved through years of careful sacrifice. Emily sensed his hesitation without understanding its source. "Have I done something wrong? You seem distant sometimes, like you're pulling away from our friendship." "It's not you," Daniel assured her, struggling to explain fears she couldn't fully comprehend. "I just need to be careful. Lily depends on me, and I can't risk making mistakes that affect her stability." The complexity of their situation deepened when Emily began spending entire weekends with their small family, attending Lily's soccer games and helping with homework, while Daniel worked extra hours to save money for school expenses. They developed routines that felt natural and comfortable, grocery shopping together, cooking dinner as a team, sharing quiet conversations after Lily went to bed. These domestic moments created intimacy that transcended their different backgrounds, building emotional connections based on shared values rather than material circumstances. Emily found satisfaction in contributing to household tasks that her privileged upbringing had never required, while Daniel discovered the joy of sharing parental responsibilities with someone who genuinely cared about Lily's well-being. "You know what I love about being here?" Emily asked one evening while drying dishes that Daniel washed. "Everything feels real. No pretending, no performing, no trying to be someone I'm not." Daniel smiled at her words, understanding exactly what she meant about the relief that comes from authenticity. "Lily and I don't have much, but what we have is honest. No masks, no games, just us trying to take care of each other." The growing attraction between them became harder to ignore as they shared more intimate moments. Quiet conversations about dreams and fears, gentle touches while working together, comfortable silences that spoke of deep emotional connection. Keep watching, because when the truth comes out, Daniel will face a choice that could cost him everything he's worked to build. The confrontation erupted on a Thursday afternoon when Richard discovered Emily's car parked outside Daniel's apartment building, shattering the careful balance they had maintained between public propriety and private friendship. His fury was immediate and overwhelming, born from protective instincts that had intensified since their parents' death had left him responsible for Emily's safety and reputation. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Richard demanded, cornering Daniel in the maintenance shop where other employees could witness the CEO's unprecedented display of raw emotion. "Stay away from my sister. She's not some charity case for you to feel good about helping." Daniel's response was calm despite the public humiliation. "Emily is my friend. She's welcome in my home anytime she chooses to visit. Friend? Richard's laugh carried bitter disbelief. You're a janitor who works for me. She's worth $50 million and doesn't need friends who push mops for a living. You're beneath us, and this fantasy needs to end before you embarrass us all. Emily arrived during Richard's tirade, having come to meet Daniel for lunch, only to find herself in the middle of a confrontation that laid bare every class prejudice and social barrier that had shaped her privileged life. Her voice shook with anger as she faced her brother. Daniel is the only person who's ever treated me like a human being instead of a possession you need to manage. I'm protecting you, Richard shot back, his voice rising with frustration, born from years of shouldering responsibility for Emily's well-being. He wants something from you. Money, status, connections. Men like him always do. Men like him saved my life when I was in real danger, Emily replied with fierce loyalty. Where were your security guards and your protection when I actually needed help? Daniel was there, and he didn't even know who I was. Richard's threat was delivered with cold precision, designed to exploit Daniel's greatest vulnerability. If you continue this inappropriate relationship, I'll terminate your employment immediately. Both jobs, all references, any chance of working in this industry again. Think about your daughter before you make decisions that will destroy her future. The ultimatum hung in the air like poison, forcing Daniel to confront impossible choices between protecting his child's security and honoring feelings that had grown stronger than he wanted to admit. Lily needed stability, health care, educational opportunities that his employment provided, all of which would disappear if he defied Richard's demands. That evening, Daniel sat alone in his kitchen after Lily went to bed, wrestling with decision that would define not just his future, but his daughter's as well. Emily had texted repeatedly, wanting to discuss Richard's threats, but Daniel couldn't bring himself to respond while his thoughts churned through scenarios that offered no clear path forward. His brooding was interrupted by Lily's quiet voice from the doorway. Dad, are you okay? You look sad. Daniel tried to smile reassuringly. Just thinking about work stuff, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about. But Lily possessed the intuitive wisdom that children develop when they have experienced loss and learn to read adult emotions for signs of impending change. Is it about Aunt Em? I heard you on the phone with her earlier. Maybe we won't be seeing Emily as much anymore, Daniel admitted, unable to lie to someone whose trust he'd worked so hard to maintain. Sometimes adults have complicated situations that affect friendships. Lily's response carried moral clarity that adults often lost while navigating social pressures and competing priorities. You always told me that doing the right thing is more important than being safe. If Aunt Em is our friend and she makes us happy, isn't keeping her our friend the right thing to do? Her innocent question cut through every rationalization Daniel had constructed about protecting their security at the cost of genuine relationship. His 11-year-old daughter had identified the fundamental choice he was avoiding, whether to live according to principles he'd taught her or abandon those values when following them became personally costly. The next morning, Daniel walked into Richard's office with quiet determination that came from knowing his daughter was watching how he handled moral challenges. He found Richard reviewing financial reports, his expensive suit and commanding presence designed to reinforce the power differential between CEO and employee. I need to tell you something, Daniel began, his voice steady despite knowing he was risking everything he'd worked to build for Lily's future. Richard looked up with the satisfaction of someone who expected capitulation. Have you come to your senses about my sister? I won't walk away from Emily, Daniel replied simply, meeting Richard's gaze without flinching. Not from her friendship, not from what we mean to each other, not from what's right. Fire me if you need to, but I won't abandon someone I care about because you're uncomfortable with our relationship. Richard's office fell silent as he processed Daniel's defiance, his face cycling through anger, disbelief, and something approaching grudging respect for someone who refused to be intimidated by threats that would have cowed most employees. The CEO, who had built an empire through decisive action, found himself facing someone whose principles proved stronger than self-preservation. Emily chose that moment to enter without knocking, her determination evident in every line of her posture as she addressed both men. This stops now, Richard. I'm tired of being treated like property that you manage instead of a person who makes her own choices. Emily, you don't understand, Richard began, but she cut him off with authority that matched his own. I understand perfectly. You've spent so many years protecting me that you forgot I'm an adult who can decide who deserves to be in my life. Daniel risked his safety to save me from real danger, then opened his home and heart to someone who was lonely and lost. If you can't see his worth, that says more about your limitations than his. The confrontation might have continued indefinitely, but Lily's unexpected appearance in the doorway changed everything. She had convinced the security guard to let her visit her father's workplace, bringing him the lunch he'd forgotten in his morning rush to face Richard. "Hi, Mr. Ross," Lily said politely, unaware of the tension filling the room. "Dad always talks about how hard you work to take care of everyone here, just like he takes care of me and Aunt Em." Richard stared at the 11-year-old girl, whose presence transformed an abstract discussion about inappropriate relationships into recognition of real people whose lives would be affected by his decisions. This wasn't corporate maneuvering or social positioning. This was a child who had found stability and happiness through connections that transcended class boundaries. "Your father is a good man," Richard said slowly, his voice softer than Emily had heard in years. "The best," Lily agreed with absolute certainty. "He taught me that family isn't just about blood, it's about people who show up when you need them." Her innocent wisdom accomplished what arguments couldn't, forcing Richard to confront the fundamental question about what actually mattered in measuring human worth. Daniel had shown up when Emily needed help, had provided stability for his daughter despite limited resources, had demonstrated character that corporate success couldn't purchase or position couldn't guarantee. Over the following weeks, Richard observed interactions he had previously dismissed as inappropriate. Watching Daniel treat Emily with respect that valued her opinions rather than her inheritance. Seeing Lily blossom under the attention of someone who chose to be part of their family rather than being obligated by blood or contract. The breakthrough came during Lily's school play, when Richard found himself sitting beside Emily and Daniel in uncomfortable auditorium seats, applauding a performance that mattered to them because they cared about the performer rather than seeking social or business advantage from attendance. "Why did you risk so much for her?" Richard asked Daniel during intermission, genuine curiosity replacing his earlier hostility. Daniel's answer was characteristically simple. "Because she matters. To me, to Lily, to the person I want to be. Some things are more important than job security or social approval." That evening, Emily joined Daniel and Lily for dinner at their kitchen table, sharing spaghetti and stories without the formal barriers that had previously defined her interactions with people outside her social class. No business suits were worn, no corporate hierarchies were acknowledged, no wealth disparities were discussed. Instead, three people who had found each other across impossible social boundaries celebrated the ordinary magic of shared meals, homework help, and comfortable conversations that built relationships stronger than any legal contract or financial arrangement could establish. "You know what I realized?" Emily said as they cleared dishes together. "I spent years looking for people who wanted to know Emily instead of just Richard's sister. I found her right here." Lily beamed with the satisfaction of someone whose matchmaking instincts had proven accurate. "See, Dad? I told you we weren't supposed to be alone anymore." Daniel smiled at both of them, understanding finally that love didn't require permission from social conventions or approval from people whose opinions mattered less than the happiness of those who had chosen to build family together. "No, sweetheart," he replied, pulling both Emily and Lily into an embrace that felt like coming home. "We're definitely not alone anymore. We're exactly where we belong, together." Months later, when Richard walked Emily down the aisle at their wedding, he whispered an apology that carried the weight of genuine recognition. "I was wrong about him, about what makes someone worthy of my sister. Thank you for being brave enough to choose love over my approval." Hushhurn. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Our Heart Stories for more emotional and powerful tales of love, courage, and the second chances that transform ordinary moments into extraordinary families.